Hi, this is Leonard from Master Sprinter TV. Today we're going to talk about mobility, and we're going to distinguish between passive flexibility versus kind of more active mobility. And then we're also going to discuss kind of the value of mobility for sprint athletes, and then give you some movement patterns which will help you to be more mobile in the various joints, whether it's hips, ankles, thoracic spine, and so forth. Now, mobility is the ability to control a joint through a full range of motion with strength and stability. And then some of the benefits include the ability to transform passive flexibility into more usable power and force production. Can also help to lower injury risk. Can help to enable proper sprint mechanics by accessing positions under force. And then lastly, can help to improve stride length. Now, the key movement qualities that we're trying to target with mobility training are as follows. Hip flexion, hip extension and rotation, hamstring elasticity, ankle stiffness and dorsiflexion, thoracic rotation and extension, and then lastly, front side mechanic coordination. Okay, as we dive a little bit deeper into different joints, we're going to start off with hip mobility. So with hip mobility, you're trying to improve your stride length, your front side mechanics, your pelvis position, hip flexion, which we mentioned earlier, which is kind of your knee drive, your hip extension, which is kind of your push down at ground contact and pushing back, at toe off. You're trying to develop kind of that triple extension, the force application during ground contact. And then just trying to generate, faster turnover in general. So, as we get into some of the movement patterns to help enhance mobility, just keep in mind we're kind of aiming for kind of end of range strength, which could involve, kind of isometric holds, kind of at max range, rather than kind of, forcing, passive flexibility, which is not the aim here. We're aiming for mobility, not passive flexibility. As we get into specific exercises for hips, you've got movements such as leg swings, which would be front, back, or lateral. You've got walking lunges. You've got your kind of your 90-90 hip rotations, Cossack squats, what's referred to as a couch stretch, as well kind of band resisted marches, and then another good movement which works a lot of or different joints would be what's referred to as the world's greatest stretch. And again, on a separate video, I did illustrate some mobility movements, as well as another one on plyometric moves. But elsewhere on YouTube, you can kind of find examples of some of these exercises to keep this video from getting too long. So with your ankles, your calves, and Achilles, what you're trying to do is you're trying to develop kind of that ankle stiffness, improving dorsiflexion. Creating kind of that, restores and release of elastic energy, which kind of creates that spring-like bounce or push-off, after ground contact, because we don't want long ground contact times. So we're trying to reduce ground contact times, and so there are movements we can do to kind of improve vertical stiffness or ankle stiffness and improve mobility in those joints and muscles. Okay, so for your ankle, Achilles, and half, you've got several movements. We'll start off with your ankling drills. You've got low amplitude pogo hops. You've got what's referred to as the short foot exercise, your bent knee soleus raise, and then lastly what are referred to as your eccentric heel drop. Now, I spoke a moment ago about hamstring elasticity. So what we're trying to do here with your hamstrings, you're trying to be able to tolerate high speed eccentric loads at which, for example, like during max velocity, you can have forces that are 3 to 5 times your body weight. So again, hamstrings, common injury area. So definitely, having mobility in hamstrings is another critical thing to not overlook. Okay, so some mobility movements for your hamstrings would include your single leg Romanian deadlifts, straight leg bounds, A skips, and then lastly what's referred to as a long lever hamstring bridge. Now with the thoracic spine, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create or enable a torso rotation, as well as kind of create a counterbalance during high-speed movement. And then, so there are a couple movements that we can do to kind of enhance thoracic spine mobility. Okay, so for thoracic spine mobility, we've already mentioned the world's greatest stretch. And then lastly, I'll just kind of throw in as well what's referred to as the open books exercise to give you another movement. Now with our shoulders, we're just trying to improve, our ability to be relaxed and kind of have good arm action and rhythm. Because again, your arms, even though they're not creating power that moves you down the track, they still are a counterbalance to the forces that are being produced by the opposing leg. So it's still an area to not overlook. Now again, we want to distinguish between passive flexibility and mobility. So again, passive flexibility, it's kind of looking at a joint range of motion or how far a muscle can be stretched using kind of long duration static stretches using some sort of an external force. Again, it's probably not as much of an issue with masters athletes being excessively flexible, but again, it's not necessarily the focus for sprinters to be to have kind of gymnastic type flexibility. Now again, the reason why we don't want to be focused on kind of excessive passive flexibility is because excessive passive flexibility, what it actually can do is it can actually reduce tendon stiffness, which is needed to transfer force into the ground. It reduces the ability to store elastic energy, reduces explosive power and force production, reduces a reactive strength, and then actually increases ground contact times, which is the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish as sprinters. So hopefully you have an understanding now of the difference between passive flexibility and mobility, why mobility is of value to sprint athletes, kind of the benefits there and what we're trying to accomplish with mobility in different joints, some examples of different mobility movements, and then hopefully in the next video I've got a little surprise for you. It's a training video, but a little different than some of the other ones that I've done in the past. So until next video.